Hello, we've got a Vox AC50 on the bench to look at today. This is a 1966 JMI one, and this has got red plating tubes, or at least one that's red plating that we know of. So I'm sure most of you have seen these amps before, classic tube amp, and this one's in wonderful condition. It really is. Can't believe the condition it's in. So let's have a look. Let's just go up with the camera and have a look at the top. So if we look at the top, you see we've got a voltage selector there, fuse holder. We'll have to check that fuse, make sure it's the correct value. On off switch. We've got the brilliant channel, much as you have on the Vox AC30, and then you've got a normal channel, just a very simple tube amp really. The 4 input set out like you get on the Marshalls there, and you can see this faceplate is where the paint's just worn off it, just for years and years of people turning these knobs, and yet this amp's still in fantastic nick. Apart, you know, it's incredible. The one thing I don't like about these amps, it's nothing to do with the sound or anything or the look, is this grill, how close it is to the top of the tubes are so close to this grill, should I say. I don't care for that very much. If something gets dropped on there, it'll smash the tubes, guaranteed. As it drops down, pushes the grill down onto them. So we're looking at the back, and you can see we've got these speaker sockets here, and we've got a wheel there. You can see we've got the Jennings Musical Industries plate on the back there, got the power cord in there, and we've got an adapted cable for the speaker, which is good. What have we got in this bag? That's just a guitar cable that's in there. So pretty simple there, what we can see on the back. Let's check the fuse in this plug first of all. Let's just see what we've got in here. Should be seeing a 3 amp. If it's correct, let's have a look. It's a 5. We can live with that. I think I'll change that for a 3, but in there. But it's makes a change from the 13s that we usually see in there. Right, we need to get the back off of this amp, and we need to have a look at these tubes. I think we might as well just get this straight out the case, because we know these tubes, or at least one of these tubes, is red plating. Right, so we're having a look at this. The first thing we noticed, this amp's had a lot of damp in it at some time. Got quite a bit of rust around here. It's had some work done on it before. Mullard tubes in there, so let's just ease one of those out, and you can see it looks like we've got a separate bias adjustment for each tube there. That one doesn't look like it's been a light, but there's usually the telltale brown state. Aha, there we go. Yeah, on that one, look. So yeah, that one we can see has been red plating. Look at the muck in these. My days. How on earth was that ever connected? Look at the pins on that. Dearie me. How's that ever connected? So this amp has been serviced at some point, but obviously I would think some considerable time ago. Not quite. So those little look at those little thin insulators there. That's for the negatives, but these positives, just a tiny little insulator there for. I don't like the look of those. I've seen that, but on these, that's the usual thing. But I don't like them. But not the way I'd want that to be put together. And with the amount of corrosion around those, could quite easily get it tracking to ground. See if I can come in a bit and let you have a look at those. I mean, a lot of you will have seen inside one of these before. Some of you probably even worked on one. You know more about, as much about them, if not more than I do. So you can see we've just got this like plastic isolator there, insulator should I say. So these caps, I've just had the wire laid across the side of them, so a bit of Mr. Laycross, instead of coiling them round and sliding them down onto there and soldering it. And I think that the only reason they've probably not worked their way off is because these are so secure here. But that's just held on with a Nat's knacker of solder. This one's much the same. But this corrosion you can see and stuff around these that's getting onto here can quite easily make a connection with the chassis. So we need to clean those off, don't we? Those don't look good at all. These sockets are full of gunk, or 2 pins are. So there's been a lot of damp kicking around. Let's just take this one out. That one's okay. So as that red plated, see, this is the thing, has that red plated simply because there's so much gunk. Is that one of those pin 5? Because that would have disconnected the bias from the tube and it would have red plated straight away. Right, let's test these tubes then. Let's test this tube and see if it's any good. That's not looking good, is it? That's looking like a severe case of it's all over, madam, like Mrs. Blenkinsop's TV. Let's try the other one. Well, they took a while to come up. But he is a runner and a rider. First thing we need to do is clean that socket out before we do anything or put anything into this amp. We need to make sure that socket is clean. So we're going to have to blast him with some gumption cleaner. Right, so I've got that cleaned out. It's a wonder that hasn't took out the transformer, you know. Let's put some gumption in the other one as well. Check there's nothing down there that's sinister. That's what we've done on the other one. Just use this little toothbrush, make sure there's nothing in there. There we go, so at least those are clean now. Right, so we're looking inside this. I've just looked on the schematic and traced this out to make sure it's all wired up. It's pretty appalling, really. And I'll take some stills of this so you can just see the condition of this soldering, but these have basically just been thrown in. You can see that whoever's done these has not cleaned the tip of the iron, if ever they've cleaned it at all. All the muck is in the solder there. Very poor. Heat's been held on these wires for such a long time, and that it's just melted the insulation there. That one is again. These have just, as I say, this all needs to come out. All needs to be cleaned. There's flux and dirt between these. It's terrible. So it looks like this amp's been to Billy Bodgers at some time. Billy Bodgers strikes again. Same over here. If we look, it's again, there's been some really bad work there. So we've got to get all these components out and clean all this up properly. Because I don't want anyone thinking that I've left that or done that. It's atrocious. But never mind, we'll sort it out. Now I've tested some of the components on this board and most of them are really out of tolerance. These two 33k resistors in particular are out of tolerance. What else then? So these two caps have been just laid across and soldered in, and they're cold soldered at the top, so they've got to come out. I think there's a resistor hiding under there somewhere as well. And I'm just focusing on this part really at the moment, but I have checked the top board. All the plate resistors are miles out, all around 140k. There should be 100, most of them, from just what I've only skipped across really. I'm just doing a quick test. The one thing we have got on the top of here though is a 3.15 amp fuse, which should be really a 500 milliamps to 1 amp, and it's slow blow. So we can now, if that, you know, if that's been in there when this is tube's red plated, we can see why the tube's just got cremated really, because that there's no way it's going to blow that in a hurry. I've decided I'm going to address this board dipping in the middle, and it's a good job that I did as well, because you won't be able to see with the camera, but I'll so there's a bit of solder there. I won't be able to show you with the camera because we won't be able to get in. And basically what's happened is the main caps are mounted at the back of here, and someone has screwed a self-tapping screw to hold the bracket on, and that is flush with the where the board sits on those nuts. So that self-tapper has come through and is touching the board. Fortunately it's touching the board in the center where there's no terminals, but even so, using a self-tapper there, that was absolutely ludicrous. Why on earth? But you can't see that. So the other capacitor bracket on the other side has just got two nuts in like they should have. These the ones that mount downwards onto the chassis there, but that one they've obviously lost the nut and bolt, couldn't be bothered, so just screwed a self-tapper in there. Very crude. So we need to swap that now before I can address this board, and all I'm going to do is just raise this slightly, so it's a little bit close for my liking where they've pulled it down. I mean the arters are fine because it's obviously bowed with all the pressure being in the middle, but these, I mean these nuts here, they're a nut and a washer from, you know, from lying on the chassis, that's all. So if we look over the top, you can see here this has been moved across, and it's just got one self-tapper in, and you can see that that's loose there. It obviously it originally fastened on there, and then there was another screw in there, another bolt in there, sorry, not a screw. Let's get that thing out. There we go. I think I'll just clean this before I put it back in. It's a bit rusty. Right, we are we've got that just eased back there, and I take a couple of wires off there, but I've got to take those off anyway to rearrange the fuse, and burnt one of those wires on those center taps, so I've got to remake that anyway, so no big deal. So we need to find, there we go, so we've got to get that out first, and that came off quite easily. It, you know, just lifting the board, it's dead easy to lift the board. There's only 2 or 3 wires and you're in. It's easy. Now that's also been used to support the board, that one as well. So I'm going to fetch that one out for a minute. Now I've found another nut and bolt to secure the bracket. I've cleaned the bracket and I've cleaned around on the chassis where the bracket goes. We'll have to clean the rest of the chassis, but that's fine for the time being. We've cleaned all around the bracket, so I might just take the other bracket off, clean that, and just clean round where the bracket sits as well. That way we know we're going to get all that rust off. We're not going to be fishing around it with the wire brush. So the outside hole is just the one that they'd stuff the self tapper through. Right, so if we look in here, this is the other mounting bracket, and we look in there, you can see that mounting is the ground there on there. That's all that's grounding those caps, and that's just fastened onto there. My days, they do sound nice, these amps, but you do have to question how they've been put together. So there's the ground point for the caps. So the first thing we need to do is Dremel this, get it really clean round there, and then just get that M4 bolt through there, and you can see that's what's on the caps there. Right, so I've took the other cap out. It was hanging on by a thread, because they just tacked them on there. I've took that cap's gone out now, and you can see what I've done here. I've cleaned that off really with a Dremel bit, and just got that really shiny and clean, because that's going to be our ground. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get this rust off the chassis now. And you can see on these tube socket shrouds here where they've also quite corroded as well. Right, oh dear, I just had a mask on while I was doing that. So I've got quite a bit of that off, a bit all down here as well. It's everywhere, really rusty. Quite a lot of dust and stuff coming off of that, and you can see it on here. Now also inside these tube sockets, we need to clean inside them as well, because we can see that they've corroded inside, so we don't know what the state of the pins are going to be in there. Sorry if that went a bit loud then, I was right over the camera. I'm just having a look. Amazingly enough, pins don't look too bad in there. Well, that looks a bit better. It's still not shiny, but it's got rid of all that flaky, horrible rust that was getting everywhere. Get the tip condition of these tube sockets. They look okay. And this is often the case. You see these amps, they come in for a service and then you find more and more things, and then you find people have botched things and things aren't safe, and it just takes so much time to get it all sorted out. One thing leads to another. You take the board up to it, adjust the board higher because it's a bit close to the chassis, then you find the self-tapper that leads you on to, then you come onto here, so you've got to take these off, which obviously I'd got to recap this amp anyway. So then it's like, once you think, well, I might as well clean this, and then you find that, you know, corrosion in there, and so it in the sockets, and so it goes on. You just have to keep working away until you've got it all sorted, which is what we're doing. These bias trim pots don't turn either. I had a little bit of a test. If I put the screwdriver in, they're solid, absolutely solid. So I need to take a look at those as well. Right, so I've come up with a bit of an ingenious idea. So these caps will just go in there. They're way too small, because in those days they made caps much bigger than they do now. So I have come up with this idea. Originally I came up with that idea and then thought that's not going to work, and it just looks a bit of a mess really, and it's one of those things you start doing and think no. So this is what I've used, and I've snapped the ends off there. So I figured, seeing as I was blessed with more brains than good looks, or at least a modicum of brains and a less modicum of good looks, that I think if I put this bracket in here like so, and then I put the bolt through there, like so, like that. Is that, I ever got to draw that out? I might just have to. They might not just want to take that size bolt. Let's have a look. No, they don't, so I need to draw that, but you get the idea, don't you, what I'm trying to do there. And then that, obviously that goes in there, and then we just tighten the lot up and the cap stays tight in there. That's the general idea. So it has its own bracket in there. I don't know how good that's going to be yet, but it's certainly better than botching it up with the crap that and the ones that came out before were done with the same. I'll show you in a minute. But I think if I get that in there, tighten that up, I think that'll be okay. As long as they don't pull out. It doesn't look, again, it's not the prettiest looking thing, is it? I suppose if we put them that way around, it's a bit harder to see the broken off side. It looks a bit tidier. Again, it's not ideal, but it's probably the best way we're going to do those and get them safe. And again, you can see what's happened on these. These are a slightly bigger diameter, these caps, and you can see they've put all this stuff on, and it's just gone all gooey over time, and it's worked. You know, there's no doubt about it. That's worked and held them in place. Just got the light in there. You can see he's not going anywhere. He's solid. So that has worked really well, and that looks okay. It's very solid. It's certainly better than doing it the other way that I was going to do it, and I suddenly decided no. So there we go. So they're in dead solid now. It's worked. We've got our ground in there, you can see. So we best get the other one in. Right, so we're looking at this fuse now. Now this fuse, as I said before, was on the ground side of the B+. And the nuts come up through there, and they're a little bit close to these for my liking, and I've bent these up, but there is a possibility if that's bent back it'd be very close to the nut there. So we have got to do something about that. So what I'm going to do is this is like a double, it's like this, I don't know what it is, fibre board, whatever, but we're going to drill that rivet out there, and that'll split that in two. And then I'm going to drill these rivets out, and then I'm going to put this in there, and I'm going to drill all the way through. Now that takes it a little bit further away from the holes, but also I can insulate these because they're just terminals. I can just slide a thing over there much easier, where these things are going to be a bit more difficult to get anything on that's going to hold, because they're such a tiny pin, where these is quite a large pin there. So that's what we're going to do with that, to make that a bit safer. Right, I've got the fuse in. I'll just show you what I've done here. Just come in a bit. You can see, too close will be out of focus. So we've got the fuse. We've mounted this fuse holder on here. I've super glued it. I've put a nylon bolt through there, tightened it up, and then we've super glued the nut so it won't come loose. We've super glued this onto the base of this as well, so that ain't going nowhere. Fastened it back on with these nuts as it had before, and you can see we've got the insulation on here now. So now we've got this on the B plus side, on the live side. We've got it well away from these now, and they're insulated, so that's much safer. So now we need to replace these two capacitors, and we need to wire up and make safe the capacitors on the other side, on the base of this board. Remember, we did the we've done the clips for them, the clamps. So we need to remove these now. So we've got, what have we got for those? Let's have a look. Where's that bag with it? Ah, there we go. So we've got these capacitors, these tube doctor ones, and these are 15 plus 15, which was what was in this amp, and they will go in. I'll just bring that round, you can't see that, can you? There we go, and they will go in there, and they do fit in there pretty nice, I think. Let's just, yes, those will fasten up most delightful. So the only difference with these caps is they've got the pins, the wire on there, so we've just got to put some insulation over that, wire that one in, do the same with that one, wire that one in, and that will be done. Do the others. We've got the caps, and then this is safe enough to fire up if we wish to. So if we look at some of these capacitors on here, they're not very clever. These are covered in some kind of oil or grease. I don't know what is going on with those. Look a bit grubby. Most of these they're all 2 watt resistors as well, at least 2 watts. They look like they're certainly a good 2 watts. So we need to look at the plate resistors as well, is the other thing with these. They're all, I had a quick measure, and they're all, these 100k plate resistors are measuring like 147k. I presume they're 100k anyway. Can't really see the bands on those. See the yellow band, but I don't see, but I presume brown, black, yellow, I presume. Let's just check them on Bully's prize board. Let's have a look. 100k, 100k. What else we got there? That looks like 100k. It's not very good, this schematic, you know. Doesn't come out very good on the printer. Yes, I might just have to look. Let's have a look at the other channel. Yeah, it keeps missing off the, yeah, that's 100k, and that's no k. That too, when we looked earlier at this resistor here where it said 2k, that is 12k. If you actually put it up on the computer screen, it shows just as 12k, so that one is right. We haven't removed that yet, and that is on the bias, so we may well leave that. If the bias, we can set the bias in with those pots. We also need, I sprayed some switch cleaner, some of this Service Oil Super 10 into those bias pots Saturday, and it's Monday now, so we're going to see if they've loosened off any, because they were quite tight. They'd barely turn. In fact, that was with a screwdriver. They wouldn't turn at all with your fingers, and you should be able to just turn those really. Right, we'll wire these 2 caps up, and then the other thing I want to do in here as well is these pots have got this gunge on the back. So I think what I'm going to do is lie a cloth across here, and then I'm just going to get all that off with a wire brush on the drill gently, and just get that off. Awful lot of gunge down here as well, where people have been soldering and things. We've got these 25 microfarad caps here. Don't know whether they'll be any good or not. That one doesn't look brilliant. It doesn't. Looks like its innards are starting to come out. So we'll have to check those as well. There's 3 of those there. Oh, 4 or 5 of those. Right, so we've got this first capacitor in. I've had to J-hook this because it just wouldn't reach. Talk about a sod's law. But anyway, we've done that. It's the only way we could do it. So let's give him a measure. And he's on the money, 47.7. So he's on the money, so he'll be staying as well. He's a bit dusty. Shall we brush him off? I don't know where the brush has gone now. Getting ready for a tidy up. But anyway, we'll brush him off when the brush shows up. A bit oily, but he's okay. What have we got here? So just under this bypass cap here, we have, is that 4.7k? That's going to be on a cathode. 4.7k, I do believe there. On that, coming off that cathode, 4.7k. It looks like 47. It's obviously not if it's a cathode resistor on a preamp stage. It wouldn't work very well with 47 on it. Let's measure him and see what he's got to say. .2, 4.3. So he's a little low, but he'll do. He's a lumberjack. He's okay. He's good enough. Now I've got another resistor here hiding that we've just got from under there, and that's 1.5k, I do believe. Rather large, isn't it? For a, presume that's a cathode resistor. 1.376. He'll do. He's near enough. Now that's more like it. It fits in much better. So where were we? This 100k resistor. I was going, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, wasn't I? There we go, and you can see why. I'm afraid he's suffering from a severe case of high altitude. Yeah, that's pushing up towards double. So I'm afraid he's going to have to go. So what we got under here, got another 1.5k, another very large cathode resistor, I'm guessing. He's perfect. Got another plate resistor here, 100k, and he's 148, so he's not a lumberjack and he's not okay. Resistor here, 10k, 11.2. He's very oily though, isn't he? I think we might have him out because he's covered in gunge as well. And that one is 56k. That's 84. My days, that's a bit out. 56k, yeah. And this one is, oh, he's 113, a bit over, but yes. Let's go a bit, whoops, fail. Let's utch along a bit, and we'll utch along slightly with the camera. So where have we got to? Him. And then we've got 1.5k here. Not sure what he's doing, but it's probably on the cathodes. It's got definitely going to a tube, I think. 1.4, he's suitable. Let's try the one next door. 149 instead of 100, so I'm afraid he's all over. Got a 10k here, and he's measuring 13.6, so he'll have to go. And then we've got 56k here. He's 88.03, so we'll be waving goodbye to him. And then we've got another plate resistor here, 119, and we've got a 1 meg here, I do believe. We'll have to, we might have to take him out of well, that's a, yeah, we might have to take him out of circuit. Let's just move the meter down this way a shade. Let's go in here. We've got another 1 meg. He's 1.1, so he's okay. And we've got another 100k here. He's 130 going on, yeah, 130.75. He's not okay. And then we've got a 22, 25.86. So there is some resistors there that are really out of tolerance, quite a lot. Not that you probably saw most of those on the meter, but with the light, I must check things like that. So there's a fair bit of work there to do. Now the other thing we need to do now is this next capacitor, which is this one here, and the wire for this one goes all the way down to here. So we're going to have to J-hook that by the looks of it, because the other one goes to here. Right, I've got these caps fitted the other ones, and I've put this insulation on which was missing on the others. And what they've done, they've gone straight across, cornered down, and then just soldered them on the sides of those pins, and they've done the same with the grounds. So what I've done is I've sloped them down, because obviously by doing what they did, they weren't enough length, which is why they soldered them to the side. So I've actually faced them, pointed them down, and then wrapped them round the pin, and then crimped it, and then soldered it, and that's made it safe. And we've got the insulation on there. To not have insulation on those is insane, and I'm still not happy about these being exposed, but it's a damn sight safer. I've changed all the components that were way out of tolerance on this amplifier. I've also changed the coupling caps to the output tubes, because I put a couple of really decent Vichets in there, because we're having a new set of tubes in this. It just makes sense. What else? Cleaned the back off these pots now. Back to these pots. We've cleaned off that horrible, what it was. So this now is pretty much done. With the caps are done. Obviously we've seen that. We've done the board on the there, and we've sorted those caps out on there. On the other side, the main electrolytics. So this is now just about ready to power up. Right, we've just fired this Vox up, and we've had a few problems, but we've ironed them out. Got the cam, just holding the camera. I know I normally have it on a tripod. I've got a 10k resistor jumpered in the bias to ground. That was 12k, but I've put a 10 in there, took that 12 out, and we're just going to see how we go with that. The bias pots are fully up, so at the coolest point, just put another bulb in there, and we'll let it go quiet for a minute. Put another 100 in, so we've got 200 watts of current limit in now. You can see now the negative voltage on there is climbing up slightly on there. We've got some frying, and that I can tell you is on one of the channels. So if I turn up this channel, we've got some issues there. If I turn this, so the amp's completely silent when I turn down, so we've got no issues with capacitance hum or anything, or we shouldn't have, because we've got new caps in. So I've been doing some testing with this, because I discovered that when the tubes are not in this amp, you must never run these up at 240 volts. Not that I did, because I did it on a current limiter and the variac, and the meter got to 500 volts long before we ever reached 240 on the wall outlet. Now the B plus just climbs and climbs with the tubes out, and I got to just over 500 volts and it was still climbing, and I was nowhere near at 240 volts for the wall outlet. So I don't know, and it's to do, I've done some testing, and it's to do with this bias arrangement here with these capacitors. The way they've done, those caps are set more, they kind of set on before you get to the diode, and as soon as you disconnect those, this amp behaves normally. As soon as you connect that up, you get the B plus climbing. Now once you get the tubes in and everything, it's fine. But the problem is when you first switch this on, it goes above 500 volts. It's trying to climb above there, but it obviously the tubes warm up before it gets too far. Now these had, if we look on this schematic, these amps originally, when they made them solid state, had that thing with the dot on there, you can see coming off the diodes to the choke, and that is a Brimistor. And in fact, if we look on the, that's a more modern schematic someone's drawn, but in actual fact, if we look on this one, you can see it says Brimistor. I was a Brimistor, it's Brimistor. I'm an idiot sometimes. Brimistor. Now what that does, that lets the B plus come up slowly. So that was obviously put on for a reason when these amps went solid state, when they went off the GZ34, because the GZ34 would bring the voltage up slowly, so there would be no need to have a Brimistor in there. So that this amp needs that Brimistor, but on this model it was removed. It was rather a large item. In fact, we're going to have a look at some photos of that. I've got the new tubes in, I've got the bias really cool. The current limiter's still on, and you can see we need to go up a little on here. Wrong way. You can see there we've got a lot of crossover distortion. We'll lose some of that when the current limiter comes off. So I've checked the coupling caps, and we've got a bit of leakage on those mustard caps, unfortunately. A couple of them are leaking, so they've got to go. What else? Clean the pots, clean the sockets. So we've got rid of some of the frying and crackling now, but with the controls, when you turn the volumes on one of the channels, and I think one of the trebles on the first channel are a bit scratchy, which will be those leaking caps. I've got a 15k resistor now in the bias to ground. We had it was, remember, it was originally a 12, but it was at 14. I tried a 10 in it, and with those test tubes that wasn't enough. But we could get the bias in, but there wasn't a lot of scope on the pot, so we want it somewhere in the center of the pot. So I'm going to flick off the current limiter, and we should see that go up massively, and it has. So we need to go up there. So yeah, now we're at like 20 volts, but you can see we've got that crossover distortion all the way down. Now I've got to be a bit more careful when I'm biasing this one, of course, because I've got to get these tubes matched because they've got separate bias adjustments. So we're going to do this on the scope, but we're also going to have to get those balanced. So just adjusting both of them slightly. Got that 1.2 volts drop there across the transformer. We've only got 0.8 on the other one. So we need to bring the other one up a bit. And that's about right, 1.2, so they're pretty close at that. Right, let's turn the volume up again. You can still see we've got crossover distortion. So I've only got 17 milliamps there, so we're looking for somewhere around about 38 milliamps or less if we can get away with the crossover distortion. So we need to come up some more. 17 milliamps is way low. So we may run out of scope on that. Those test tubes draw a bit more current than the ones we've got in here. Now you can see the crossover distortion is nearly gone now. So let's see where we're at now. Now we're up to 29 milliamps there. Tiny bit of crossover distortion still. You can see we've got some there as we crank it. Getting a bit more gumption though now. Let's just see where we are now with things. The amp's biased up. The SD card ran out while I was doing the bias on here, so we didn't film the last part of it. But basically we've got these tubes biased at 17 watts, just a little bit under, and they were fine there on the scope. What else? So we've got a bit of leakage on these capacitors here, about half a volt on this one. I've changed this one already. This is for this channel, and we've got some leakage on this channel, especially when it's turned up towards flat out, that you can hear the pot begins to become scratchy. When I've got the meter on there, you get about half a volt, so we need to remove these. In fact, we'll just remove them all, because it's obvious this amp's been somewhere damp. These are tired, and this amp's going to be gigged regular, so we need this amp to be reliable. And we've also got those Mullard tubes in there, which, let's face it, any preamp tubes are expensive now, but the Mullard ones particularly so. So we don't want DC leaking onto the grids. We've got the 15k resistor soldered in now on this main board here. You can't see down there, but that's all finished. So all that remains to do now, I've cleaned these sockets. One of these were a bit intermittent, so we need to just, I haven't plugged the guitar in since I cleaned them. I just gave them a good clean last night, late before I finished. Right, so I've got this amp now ready just to switch on. Now bear in mind these caps are rated at 500 volts. Let's just see what happens before these tubes warm up. Nearly 530 volts. The caps are rated for 500. Volume full up there from when we were testing it on the dummy load. So that's a bit of a problem. Now that is caused by this bias circuit. So if we look on this schematic, you can see we've got the one leg of the AC feed there, and then we've got these two capacitors there going up to there, and that set out there is what's causing this rising HT voltage. Now if the tubes are not in, it just keeps going and going, and obviously when I checked it, it had got up to about 530 volts ish, and I knocked it off, but you could see it was just going to keep going. And I don't know where that would stop at, because the caps, it's already gone over the caps, even though they're not having any current drawn in them. It's not good to overvolt them like that. So if you disconnect these caps, you don't get that problem. I had about 499 volts, something like that, when I disconnected this. Obviously, you know, there were no tubes in it because I disconnected the bias. So that is a bit of a flaw in this amp, unfortunately. And the varistor, I think that's why they originally put that in. I'm speculating, but I'm guessing that that's why they put that varistor in there. So that's a problem on this amp. So the other thing is, having anything between the choke and the rectifier has got to be fairly hefty. You know, this amp's quite a big amp, draws a bit of current, and the actual varistor you can see on those amps is quite a big old thing on the earlier models. So I don't know what to do on that one. But yes, it is a problem. We could uprate the caps, I suppose, but we'd have to, you know, we'd have to check all of these caps and see, you know, just how far that is it, are we getting these over 500 volts? So let's look again. 539, just touch 540. That's a real problem. Those caps are going to get that every time this amp is switched on. So I've had this amp on test now for nearly an hour and just getting ready to start the demo, and suddenly and that is on this second channel here. The other channel, it is fine. Yes. You've got this amp quiet again, and it turned out to be the this first tube is actually for this second channel on here, and I'd swapped that for that JJ2 because that Mullard tube was a bit noisy, and it turned out to be that or swapped that, and we seem okay now. So I don't know. So we'll see. This is why we have them on test for a long time, to see what problems show up. But anyway, let's have a blast. So that's in channel 2, which is the noisy channel. Now the scope on the treble of this is quite something. These tone controls interact a bit like on those Vox 125 type things where turn the treble all the way up, you lose the bass as well, or some of the bass. But Vox amps are known for being a bit bright, and the controls work the other way around, as I said earlier in the video. And these pickups are quite, this Tone Rider pickup, this is Rebel 90, is quite a bright pickup. So I like bright pickups. So we've either got any of the treble on there, about half the bass. This thing is loud. go quieter. So this Seymour Duncan Jeff Beck, this 59 Jazz, which I've got in single coil, which I just used the spare lug on the tone pot. You can hear that change. That's my demo in the amp really, not my guitar. Channel 2, coming back to front this time. Let's try channel 1. Not a massive difference between these channels really. Except this one doesn't seem to take the bass off when you turn the treble up. I've not really looked in depth on the schematic how they're wired. Does sound nice though. It's loud. With that. So beautiful sounding amp there, and plonking around on this altered tuning. So where are we now with this amp? So what we're left with is this startup problem and this missing Brimistor. So I had a bit of a read up about that Brimistor, and it's actually made by Brimistor, and there is a website guy's done some stuff on this, and we're going to have a look at that in part 2, and we're also I'm going to have a think about how to solve this problem. The correct way of doing it for me would be to change that bias circuit, because that's what's causing the problem. It's almost like those two caps are creating an additional power supply on that one side of that AC of the power transformer going into the rectifier there. Very strange. I've not really seen anything like that before. Any of you lot out there, some of you techs who are far more advanced than I am, you know, how would you go about it? We've got to lose 40 volts HT when this amp starts up. Remember, it just peaked at 540 volts. The caps will only stand 500. So what's the other option? Upgrading the caps to 600. Well, good luck with that one, because we'd have to find two caps. We could probably find, I did see some hi-fi caps online, £36 each. So I don't think that's a particularly good start, is it? £72 just for two capacitors plus postage, no doubt. And then even if you did find a couple of 600 volt caps to go on the, you know, on the main two electrolytics, you've got these two here, and they're obviously 15 plus 15. You'd have to find some of those at 600 volts. I don't recall ever seeing any of those. So that's probably not the way to go, upgrading the caps. Although if the caps are available, that would be the simplest option. Problem solved. You know, we know it reaches, even 550 volt caps would do, wouldn't they, really? If they did a 550, we know it's only going to 540, we'd be absolutely fine. See what you lot think. What you know, what do you think? Leave it in the comments. What you would do to sort this out. But for me, I would alter that bias circuit, because my philosophy is go to the root of the problem, and you know, deal with the root of the problem. To me, Brimistors and anything else that's going on, it's a band-aid in my opinion. But you know, you lot tell me what you think. And of course, there'll be some people out there, you know, the Vox police will be out there, you know, there'll be some people won't be happy if I change that circuit. Oh, you've modded the amp, whatever else. They'll get some of that, no doubt, because some people, and rightly, it's their opinion to think that, you know, that these amps shouldn't be modded or changed. But this amp's going out on the road, the customer wants to use it regularly, and it needs to be right. you know, I don't want this amp coming back in 12 months time because one of the caps has let go. Now, it's always been like that, to be fair, and but it had already got a set of caps in when, you know, when I got it to repair it. It had been recapped about 10 years ago, apparently. Now, that could have just been normal. Maybe the other caps have survived well. To be fair, the caps that came out of it haven't been used a lot. This amp was put in storage for quite a few years. But anyway, you lot let me know in the comments, and that'll do it for this one because I'm waffling again. So thanks for watching. You all take care, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye bye for now.